CNN's Jeanne Meserve has learned from a reliable source that when the father came to the embassy in Nigeria, he met with someone from the CIA. A report was prepared but not disseminated outside the CIA to wider intelligence community, the source telling CNN. Now, Jeanne is going to be back with more information as soon as she gets this. And U.S. counterterrorism officials are investigating possible links between last week's attempted airliner bomber and two former Guantanamo Bay prisoners. Now, these two were released from the U.S. detention facility in Cuba back in 2007 and sent to Saudi Arabia. And they say they're now leaders of a Yemen-based group affiliated with al-Qaeda. A recent Pentagon report shows that of the more than 520 released Guantanamo detainees, 27 are confirmed to have engaged in terrorist activities since their release, and 47 are suspected of participating in a terrorist attack. Now, Yemen, of course, was the scene of al-Qaeda's shocking attack on the USS Cole that happened nearly a decade ago. I am joined now by the warship's former commander, Kirk Lippold. He is now with Military Families United. Thank you so much for joining us here in the Situation Room. I want to start off with this breaking news that Jeanne had just reported. Does it surprise you that we are now learning that the father not only went to the State Department, to the consulate's office in Nigeria, and said he had concerns about his son being radicalized, but he met with the CIA? The intelligence agency actually knew about his concerns.
It's not surprising, and in fact, it's disappointing. I think that the intelligence community is in a very awkward position right now. I think, unfortunately, there has been a mindset created when the administration came in that they questioned how the intelligence community operated, how they worked to secure our nation's borders outside throughout the world, and that, quite frankly, if you look at the CIA, they're very demoralized right now. They're walking around with long faces because their very actions have been questioned, in the very manner that they were trying to keep our nation safe was being questioned by an administration that's even conducting a criminal investigation. So I think that they're erring on the side of caution right now, and they're not as willing to pursue things maybe as aggressively as they used to, for fear that it may not work out, or that they may be questioning how they came about it or what they're doing with it.
We've heard those criticisms from many people about that. But one of the things that is interesting here is that the two detainees that were released from Gitmo back in 2007, who've now claimed a leadership role in al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, they were released under the Bush administration. Do you hold the Bush administration as well accountable for these lapses?
I think what you have to look at is the Bush administration had almost 800 detainees cycle through Guantanamo Bay. They made a best judgment as they could through an interagency process that is still in place today to determine, once an individual down there no longer represented a threat to the U.S., our interests, or our allies, or was no longer of intelligence value, could they be safely repatriated back to their home country or another country. We mostly got through the low-hanging fruit, and then we started getting down to the crunch. And the people that are remaining there now, that the administration currently, with the Obama administration, is they've had to really try and parse out what they're going to do. Well, when the president came in, what he did is he raised the level of acceptable risk that we're willing to tolerate in order to try and close Guantanamo Bay on that one-year timeline.
Where do you think those 90 to 100 detainees who are Yemeni, who are now in Gitmo, should go?
Right now, I think they should stay in Guantanamo Bay. The facility itself is serving a purpose in the war on terror. It is not just a detention facility. It is also an intelligence collection center. It is where we brought high-level al-Qaeda and Taliban so that we could debrief them and learn how al-Qaeda recruited, trained, equipped, and conducted operations. Because once you understand them, you can defeat them.
You understand al-Qaeda in Yemen firsthand with the bombing of the USS Cole. 17 of your own were lost. What is the situation now in Yemen? We know that there's unemployment, they're running out of water, they've got a secessionist movement as well as a war that they're fighting. What kind of situation is the United States dealing with when they look at al-Qaeda in Yemen?
It is a very tenuous situation. Right now, the president is trying to hold a very fractious country together. He has tribal issues that he's trying to deal with. Clearly, the Saudi Arabian government has intervened on the northern border because they do not want to see al-Qaeda leaving from Yemen and operating north. There was an attack on the prince who is in charge of counterterrorism efforts for that country, similar to what was attempted on the Northwest 253 flight. So clearly, we're going to have to work much closer with the government, President Saleh of Yemen is going to have to be much more cooperative in how he allows us to work with his forces so that we can build them up and have a very solid counterterrorism force there so that they can, in fact, defend their own country.
You were a commander. Clearly, you know what it's like to lead. President Obama has called for 30,000 additional American troops in Afghanistan to go after a potential threat of al-Qaeda in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Is that the appropriate direction for resources, to go to Afghanistan instead of going to Yemen?
I think you have to focus initially where we are. Right now, we know that that border region between Afghanistan and Pakistan is going to be critical to getting stabilized and helping the Pakistanis to root out al-Qaeda there. I don't believe that right now we need to put troops on the ground in Yemen, but we clearly need to work to give them the capability to root out al-Qaeda on the peninsula there in Yemen.
Commander, thank you so much for joining us in this situation.
Thank you, Suzanne.
I appreciate it.